Hello, hi everyone. Much. Thank you for GameOn for having me and Eglezioma for inviting me and for the amazing introduction. So, let's start. I'm Alessandro Giovannucci. This is me, young me, 12 years old, by playing my first LARP. We will go through what is LARP and what does it mean today. And so I am a game designer, mainly focused on role-playing games and LARP, live-action role-playing. So what we're going to do today, we are going to very briefly define what LARP is and also talk a bit about how it's done. Bit of historical evolution, presentation of some Chaos League work, and then last part will be dedicated to me trying to show you some aspects that are inertly to LARP design, and maybe some of you can found something interesting and still use some tool in other related game design field. So there will be probably time at the end for questions, but if you really have a burning question during my talk, just raise your hand. I will try to answer. If it's too long, I will answer later, but this is a quick one. Please feel free to make that more interactive. So now let's move to a bit of the history of role-playing game, very briefly. So, of course, it's something that starts from historical war game, both entertainment and also military training. This is from or also from the 19th century, and then war game became more popular in 20th century. If you have ever heard about the famous writer H.G. Wells, that in 1913 published these Little Wars, that was like a sort of war game that you can play at your place with your friends. And then since the 60s, all the Tolkien's and fantasy became more and more important, more and more widespread through convention, meetings, books, and this had a major impact on game industry at the time. So influencing the gaming world, changing of rules, new settings, and basically of these kind of things. And this lead to this kind of first hacked and home rule chainmail that was like kind of the first Dungeons and Dragons. So it was like people trying to make this figure, this small soldier, like more behave like humans. And so this became a character. And this leads from chainmail to Dungeons and Dragons. And then we know how the history went after that. So basically, LARP comes from this tradition, and I will show you how LARP diverged at a certain point. So what is a role-playing game? This is a very short one of the million possible definition by an Italian game designer, Ruger Frezzetta, who said role-playing game is a game in which a player plays one or more fictional roles within a narrative universe, and so on and so forth. So what is interesting in this definition, what are the keys concept, the key words are roles. This is, of course, very important for role-playing games. But then we will see later in this talk that roles is not only just pretend to be someone else 100%, probably also in costume, but we switch role and we became character even if we play something that is not heavily based on portray someone else. Roles can be still also just function or action that we have to do. So it's a very interesting, a key concept, the fact of having a role. Fictional, of course, is another keyword in this sentence. Narrative universe, this is more self-explanatory. And then authority, this is very important. Who can do what and who is going to decide about the possible outcomes? This is another question. And talking of game design in different fields, what changed from a field to another basically is the authority. Who is gonna to be the authority that decide about the game and how? This made games different, but the roots is pretty much the same. And another very key words in this sentence is emergent way. Do you know what does it mean emergent in this context? Raise your hand if you don't know. Don't be shy, okay? We all have to learn everything. Emergent means that the narrative is not given and will emerge from our action. If you sit down to play Dungeons and Dragons, in some case, the dungeon master have some ideas about the story, or even evil script fact that have to happen. But then there is something that nobody can predict. This is the emergent thing. I put something on the table and you build up on my idea and so on and so forth, so the narrative emerge from the water of unknown creation. So I will give you an example that show the difference between discrete mechanics and emerging mechanics in game. Discrete, for example, if you play a game book, you know what game book is. This kind of book you say, okay, now you're facing a crossroad. You go on the left side in the cave or on the right side following the river. This is a discrete mechanics. You can only do A or B. There is nothing in between, okay? While the same situation, for example, is when my options are uncountable. I will give you another example. If you play Risk or Monopoly, you know the action you can do. There is nothing strange. Yeah, you can play around the rules, but if you play Dungeons and Dragons, sit down and the GM is just saying to you, there is a cave. How are you gonna enter the cave? Then this open to what we call strategic infinity. There is a million ways to go into a cave. And the Dungeon Master cannot foresee all the possible solutions you will come up with. This is emergent. You say, okay, we'll try to climb. And then by climbing, you roll in the dice, and then you succeed, or you don't succeed, so you fall over. And maybe you fall over on someone else, member of your party, and this guy is going to die, and blah, 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 okay? So this creates this domino effect that create the infinity strategy. And this thing, very easy, the fact of you can invent situation and I have to improvise and you build up on my ideas, create a huge success. So a lot of different format come up from a role-playing game that became big in pop culture. For example, the word XP, experience points, now is spread all over the world. It's no longer RPG's jargon. So those are a very, very short selection of things that happen after RPGs become popular. So game books, I just give you an example. Video games, we know that part of a branch of video games come from nerd playing Dungeons and Dragons, and then they went to computer gaming and create RPG for computer. We actually use the same word. And of course, LARP, which stands for live action role-playing games. Role-playing, actually. Also, role-playing, as you know, as a word, has a lot of influence on pop culture and receive a lot of influence. Several studies are more and more able to show us how these terms come also from other fields. BDSM, counterculture, avant-garde. There is an interesting study that shows that one of the first written sources that refers that role-playing was a word was one of the issues in 1960 of Playboy from Marshall McLuhan article that say role-playing game. So this is how much is entangled with pop culture and culture as a whole. And also art, psychodrama, theater of the oppressed, situationism, and all these kind of other things that seems far, but they are not that far from role-playing game. So what we learn from role-playing game? Yes, I put a lot of funny GIFs. It takes more time for me to select the GIFs than the topics for the speech, but I like it. So what we learn and up from RPGs and what we applied in other related field. First of all, collective storytelling. We discover that we can invent a story altogether. So a story can have multiple authors, which is revolutionary to me. Co-creation, which is very important, and we have to make a distinction between interactive, immersive, and co-creational. Everything can be immersive. I can immerse in several stuff. Of course, some things are made to make me immerse more, but I can immerse in everything. Interactive, I can have a lot of interaction. This clicker I'm using is interactive. I can go back and forth. I do something, and I'm interacting with my clicker. But it's not co-creative. This clicker is not allowing me to create my slide on the go. While in a role-playing game, I will ask you people to actually create content for the session. If they don't create something, the game just can't work, just stuck. So this is also very important, that co-creation is one of the end on the spectrum. You have a full spectrum that goes for interactive to co-creative and everything in between. Also, cooperation. In role-playing games, we tend to cooperate more. Even if our characters are competing, we are co-creating, and so we have to cooperate to create something. And also, of course, immersion. We all know that this word now becomes too wide, but we have like a sort of idea of what it is. So now we go to narrow the scope and go more to LARP, live action role playing. What is LARP? Have you never heard this term? Please raise your hand if you have ever heard about LARP as a word. If you have. If you have. Okay. This is an easy shot on a gaming crowd. Okay, now raise your hand if you already have played a LARP. Okay. So I will go very briefly once again to the story of these things and where this come from, and then we will try to go more into practicalities. So first thing, evolution of LARP. There are some things that were LARP before LARP was a thing. Okay, so we found LARP element in rituals, in religion, in social events, in anthropological studies, play pretend for kids or for adults. So all of that are moments where you embody someone else. So of course it's a wide array of activity. I will give you 3 or 4 examples in history. First of all, the naumachia. If you're familiar with ancient Greek, you know that naumachia means ship battle of different ships. Tito, the emperor, the Roman emperor, create this historical reenactment of the Syracuse battle. But what was very interesting, so they flood one of the main square in Rome with water and put ships in it and then say, you play the Syracuse and you play the Arab, and then you make the fight. But the interesting thing was, we knew that in the Syracuse battle, the Roman won, historically. But to celebrate their victory, they created this kind of IRG game where the ending was not sure. So they are not rehearsing in the way that Roman will win for sure. We say, okay, we rehearse. Who's going to win this year? Who knows? So they were embodied character, and the ending was not sure. It was emerging, particularly emerging because they were in water. But I think you understand. So the idea was they were an open ending. So a lot of playful content in it. It was a game, was an improvisation of play pretend. I will give you another example. This is Elizabeth I from Tudor family. She was completely hooked to LARP in a way that we cannot even imagine. And also, since she was the daughter of a very important king, she could play a lot with very rich men at the time, with a lot of big production, let's say. So she liked improvising costume, and if you are the princess, if you like to play in costume, it means that everyone have to do it. Okay, so all the nobles and the courtesans have to do it. So she was around in the family garden, and then people portray like NPCs at the time, reading poems, asking her riddles, or proposing her quests, and then there were the deities or monsters around the garden. When someone invited Elizabeth I to have a good relationship with the king family, proposed them surprise game. And sometimes there were huge machinery. There were this dolphin that were like 50 meters high, and then all these kind of things, and rich scenography. So we know that for this kind of people was very important to play pretend. Then other couple of examples. Jacob Levi Moreno, maybe you know already the game, was one of the inventors of the psychodrama. So in the 20s, he was playing together improvising game in park in Vienna, in open spaces. And what was revolutionary was that Moreno was proposing play pretend for adults. We know now is a bit better, but we know that for a long time adults were not allowed to play. And even if they were allowed to do game, they were not about to be playful, which is different, and we will go to this different in a bit. And so in his theater, not entirely theater show, Moreno liked to blur the lines between participants and audience. So this was very important. For example, one of the first Moreno shows was called The Throne, you know, the chair where the king sit down. So the audience entered in the room, and they were on the stage just the empty chair, the chair for the queen. for the king, sorry. And the show starts only if someone from the audience go on stage and sit down. Otherwise, we wait. When the member of the audience sit down, then actors come in. Oh, king, tell us what to do. So this was like also a sort of playful blurring the line. Also, educational. This is a picture from the Rand Corporation in the 50s. They were running a future scenario possible calculation about the Cold War, and they were trying to imagine whatever could happen if Russia and America start to actually fight a real nuclear war. They tried simulation with computer, but then they moved to this kind of more role-playing aspect because they thought that the human factor were crucial for that. So we went to analog role-play, and then of course, you know, role-play situations are used also in training for military, for language learning, a lot of other stuff. Also, Boy Scout and young group. This picture comes from Hungary, where Pipeclan is one of the biggest Boy Scout youth meeting. They created this kingdom, this fictional kingdom of Slobovia. They world built the game, the world of, I mean, they created the world, they did the world building for this game by sending mails, and then once per year they met there. And this campaign went for like 30 years, and I think it's still going. So we have picture from the first one. And then we have, this is, which I like very much, Society for Creative Anachronism in the 60s in the US. They were specialized in create medieval reenactment of events that never happened. And also by staying character, people will learn real life skills like blacksmithing, sword fighting, this kind of thing. Then all these formats mix up, and then of course there were also LARP come more from the D&D streams, but also these things were around at the time. And so we come to the more modern LARP. I'm speaking, of course, for the sake of time. And what create the more modern LARP world we know nowadays are the development of fiction, so fantasy, science fiction, horror, Lovecraft, Tolkien, Asimov, all of these create that. People tend to meet up in convention like this one, talk about game, talk about literature, and then start to create this humus, this context. And then, of course, fan communities were in contact one another and want to live in first person, those fictional worlds they were passionate about, and so the establishment, of course, of role-playing games. So all of these together create the more modern LARP, and I prepared the two slides with the two more possibly older LARP we have notice of, that are Dagorir in the US end of the 60s, or Treasure Trap in English, in England, sorry, in the UK in 1982. Those two LARP were very much, how to say, we played fantasy tabletop role-playing game, now we stand up from the table and we won't try to see what's going on. So they were heavily tabletop inspired, but still the first attempt to embody your character. Then another thing was now we call Nordic LARP, which started at the end on the 90s, more or less. So they create conferences like Knutepunkt. Every year there is a conference where LARPers can meet each other, and they write books and then create a common language, because they start to do that in English. So this create one of the mainstream of the main current of the modern LARP. And what comes from this tradition, which is very important for us and also for Chaos League work I will show you in a bit, are LARP is a medium, so you can talk about it, not just have just fun, but you can have fun and also talk about more mature topic. You can experiment with different format. You can go for emotional intensity, and LARP is more like a performing art / game, and we need to document that or it will vanish forever. So I will show you just an example of one of these Nordic LARP called America. Is quite old now, and the idea was a criticism through LARP to capitalism, which is something quite new at the time in LARP, but also in RPGs in general. So it was a way to portray a dehumanized society. Basically what they did, they discharged 50 tons of rubbish in an Oslo square and say, this is the future of the world. So all the players were thrown up in this big rubbish contest square, and they have to live there for 2 days. And among all the rubbish, there were one check with, I don't know, I can't remember, with money, I can't remember how much, and they have to fight for this one. Eventually, the game was the money was went to charity, but the idea of humanity, like, try to fight each other for the last bit of richness in a world that were collapsing, and where you live, with this laundry machine wall and stuff, was quite important. So now we go to one of the first and still very effective definition of what LARP is. That come from Eric Fatland, a Norwegian LARPer and lecturer. So the idea is LARP is a meeting of players who through their roles. So, and then you can finish the sentence. But the idea, what is important is, for me, in this definition, that we define LARP as a meeting of player. This is the thing that comes first, and all the rest come later. So this is very important. Now I'm going to present you some minutes of Chaos League work, and then I will go to the last part, which is more design-wise. So we start Chaos League in 1992. I came from Pescara, which is this town, which is not famous, not rich, not glamorous Italian town, but it's still my hometown. But it's nice, it's on the sea. But in the 90s, there were nothing to do. It was a major hub for drug dealing, and no more beside that. So for a bunch of curious kids, was a bit of a dead city. So we have to choose between LARP and heroin, and we choose thing that is more addictive and more costly, so LARP. So I don't know if it probably was the good choice. And then LARP came and saved us from boredom and some danger. So we start to create games, and then we went to more international scene. So we'll present you 3 or 4 of our LARP. The first one that we made international was New Atlantis, that talk about a world where there is a severe shortage of water, which is already going on in some part of this planet. But we imagine that even Europe or more Western society went to a situation where you have like 50% of drinkable water. So if you imagine in a society like this, a Western person use around 100 liters of water per day, which is quite shocking, because when we manage to like drink 2 liters of water, we are like, go, I did it. So the rest is like 50 liters for a shower, 50 liters for a dishwasher machine, a lot of this kind of thing. So we asked player to live with just 3 liters of water per day to do everything. Of course, we had plenty for safety reason, but we say push your limit until you feel that is not comfortable, and now realize for 5 days that this is something that could happen in our future. Okay, so embody the experience. We are not saying that, we are not schooling people. We are not saying, okay, now you know. It's just a small taste of being in someone else's shoes. Then you come back to your more safe environment, but now you are more empathy when you are listening something about this topic. So this is one of the key point about this one. Was, of course, also a game that we play mixed with reality. So before they actually move into the location and up with the LARP that lasted 5 days, we asked people to join the forum and to exchange with the other, and we did the world building that way. We set up a web radio and send them news that were prompt for them to create their own world. And then things, of course, went too far, so they did real life graffiti and also protest, because the fictional world kind of mixed to the real world. And these were some of the picture of actually being the location. So we were going up and down the mountain, found the right source of water, and then also is no longer working. Okay, no. Okay, so we moved to another LARP then. Bunker 101, first time we did in 2018, and we are going to do again next summer. Bunker 101 is Fallout inspired, but not exactly Fallout. But we imagine a world in which we are in 100 in the future, 100 years in the future, and actually after the global, we imagine that the global nuclear conflict actually explode, so it's no longer possible to live outside because of nuclear bombing everywhere, so people have to stay underground. And we actually went underground to a nuclear bunker close to Rome, and we spent 3 days underground, try in your life if you can. It's very strange, but also very interesting to do. And we will create an entire city underground. There were 120 participants, so politicians, scientists, people that you know you need to do your work, you have your family. And we imagine that, and we try to live in this kind of context. And one of the main topics were in this 50 utopia, this was the actually picture took during the game. So we imagine how it's going to go. Those were the ministry board. And there were also kids because we need to raise our kids. So it was open to family. And also that was the big computer, the prompt, the ball, where you can decide who you are going to marry, because we cannot allow everyone to have kids, because we have limited sources. So it was like this Orwellian state that is telling you what you can do and what you cannot do. And so those are a bit of picture from Bunker 101, and this was the minister. I'm here, by the way. I was the former minister. And you have, of course, your costume, your friend. You have a character, and then which is just your indication for what you are going to play in this lab. And of course, radiation, explorers, and this was the big situation room. And exploring, because it's 25 kilometers of tunnel, so there is a lot of work also for the explorers. And then we move to another LARP, which is Sahara. We announced this LARP in 2020, just before this little event called pandemic. So we were able to play twice, and then we have a long break, and then we did it more times, so, more runs in the theater. And we did last year, the last run, but probably we'll run it that again. And was a big effort for us, because this LARP is played in the actual Sahara Desert. I mean, we go in the south of Tunisia with 100 players, plus 25 camels, plus guides, and logistically is a nightmare. Design-wise, we have this inner joke, was a sandbox game. Yeah. And it also was a sandbox game, actually. So people were playing archaeologues or trying to finding stuff. Is inspired by Cthulhu cycle novel, so strange findings, and then also horror, but also psychological horror, and also play in 1934. There were, of course, also the emotional content of the game. This was me playing with a player that was playing my daughter, so we have this terrible relationship, of course. And then also rituals, and then also work to decide where to go. There were also an hiking LARP where you move from a location to another. That are a bit of numbers about the budget, how many participants, this kind of thing. And then I will show you more pictures. Those, again, are pictures that are done in the game, during the game. That were the tent where we live, the camel that we used to move. This is the people going, and then working at night, and then more work in the desert. And then, so this was one of the LARP that make us a bit more known on an international scene, because a lot of people wanted to join the game. And so this is why we ran it many times. Okay, so after this one, we create another lab, which is called Miskatonic University. So once again, based on Cthulhu mythos. This time we went in Poland, in a nice castle, and the idea was to create for some days the Miskatonic University experience. So some of them were students, professor, and it was like a slice of life of this normal day in Miskatonic University, which is not normal at all, of course. So forbidden books, terrible knowledge, and also your rivalry, your friends, your lover, your enemies, and those are, once again, a bit of number. We did 7 runs in Poland and 2 runs in Philadelphia, because we didn't know that in the US you can rent a campus, a university campus. It's not a thing in Italy, so it's like, we can, and they were like, we are in summer breaks, so give us money and take it. And we say, okay. So we did 2 runs in Philadelphia, and this was, the picture are from the Poland location. So this is our Miskatonic University. Those were the room, the main hall, and some classes, and then the garden, and also, once again, all these pictures are taken in the game, during the game. Of course, seances and opening the sarcophagus, and then this was the professor meeting, and of course also a night, one more seance and one more ritual, because why not? The final ball, and the prompt, strange experiments going on. This is a professor doing an experiment of a student. Everything is super safe, they agree on everything. There is no real people get armed for the LARP. We are just having fun. Type 2 fun, probably, but still fun. And then moment of slice of life, people studying, and then secret societies, and then initiation, and everything you can imagine by reading one of these novels, you can do that in real life. Okay, then I will present you the last of the LARP I choose for you, which is Eclipse, is the most recent one. This is also played in Poland, but there is a crazy location in Poland that is these 13 domes. We actually spent the weekend over there. We imagine this story where the planet Earth is completely inhabitable, is fucked up completely, so we have to move. So in this game, players are portraying the role of people on this planet, try to see if we can live in this planet, if humanity can move from planet Earth to this B-plan planet. And of course, it's a game a lot how we treat our planet, and a lot of ethical concern, because you cannot just go and take a planet just because. So there were a lot of this. So I will show you a picture of the location, and also those are the scientists doing evaluation, and then living together, and then exploring the outside part of the planet, and having discussion and try to help each other, and then also try to rest. And those were the picture of the loved ones we left on planet Earth, to always create to the player the idea that there is an entire world outside this place game. These were the corridors, so yes, the location looks very, very cool. And those were the main hall, and those were the table where we have meetings, and more corridor because they are even more cool at night, and people working. And the assembly hall was an entire cinema, and even this picture I took it just to show you that even the toilets door were sci-fi themed, okay? And then once again, this kind of thing. So all of that to show you that LARP is something that can be very sexy on the visual point of view, but you cannot just have your costume, go to a cool location, and a LARP just appear. There is these parties, of course, the external layer are the one we use to communicate, but now we are more a gaming crowd, so there is always game design in it, and we are very interested in that. So we come up with this idea of these LARP engines. So a LARP have several engines inside that can push the game. So the idea is a LARP engine is an element that push the game. And it can be many different aspects of the life, because LARP is really much 360-degree illusion, because you are in, so you can see, smell, touch, hear everything. So the idea is that this engine can be a person, an object, a space, a set of rules, social norms, everything that can help you to create movement, because if it's too much static, then LARP tend to block a bit. So as a designer, your main question is what the player want to do in a LARP. And the second question is, I'm providing them the tool to actually do what I want. So in a LARP is very important. You have to pay extra care to those aspects, because once the game is launched, you can't exactly control the game. You don't have any system. You don't have a general room where you can say, now you do this, or you cannot even block people. You create the context, and then you give them the agency to do stuff. But compared to other game-related field, you can intervene less during the game. You can do less. You have to do everything before. So you have to provide them the tool and the idea how to use the tool, because then they are more, let's say, free. You cannot watch them in a location like this one. How you can watch what is happened. You have 13 domes, 150 participants, so you cannot know exactly what's going on. So you have to provide everything beforehand. So when I say push to the game, what I mean with push to the game, yeah, I like that also, is propose the LARPer, the player, a direction where they can go, what they can act out. And also if your LARP is well done, in my opinion, this also reinforces the vision you have as a designer of the experience. So it's a spectrum, of course, that can go to gentle push to more vigorous push. But still, you can suggest, you can force, but you have to be very aware of what you are asking people to go through, also because you are playing with their body and their emotion. So it can be a narrative push, or it can be a game design push. In my opinion, narrative is more the what. If I told you, you are an explorer on an unknown planet, trying to see whatever we can live in this planet as humanity, you already have a set of expectation. You already know more or less what you have to do. Even if you are not a scientist, you never visit another planet, but you have this idea. So the narrative is give you a gentle push and give you a set of action. You already in your mind, you're thinking, this is legit, this is not legit. This is cool, this is probably not part of the game. This is the first part. And also, on a more practical level, since we are all in the game industry, is also the part that sells your experience more. In LARP, I'm a bit sad about that, but design, I don't know how it is in the video games, but design is less attractive. What is more attractive is the setting, who you are. Then you can attract people through the what, but then you have to make your game playable through the how, through the design. So once again, if I ask you to do certain action, once again, I'm suggesting you that in this LARP, this is cool, this is less cool, this is gonna work, this is not gonna to be possible to do in this LARP. And almost in a LARP, every aspect of the LARP can be an engine, okay? So it can be the design of the LARP, it can be the communication of the LARP, it can be the location. A location can give you some affordances, we'll go through affordances in a bit, and so suggest you to do or to not do this or that. Every object, every space, every room, everything propose you thing to do, narrative design. So sometimes when a LARP is not going well, is because people didn't reflect enough about the engine you are putting in your game. Because if you are not putting engine in your game, player will put it. If I'm not clear about what you have to do in this LARP, and then I put you in a situation where it's not clear, what do? You start to improvise with what you know, okay? But probably it's not what the designer has in mind. So to sum up on LARP engines, can be pushed to the game, can orient the game, can characterize your LARP, and can be different design rules, plot, space, characters, and also they can work together. You can have several engines that enforce one another. And also, you have to be very aware that people have natural tendencies to have assumption on everything. So you have to work with people assumption about a specific situation. So now my sweet provocation that I left for the end of this speech is probably LARP is not even a game. Because role-playing game have the word game inside the name, role-playing games, while LARP is live action role-playing, period. So, is that a game? Is not a game? So, for me, let's say, is partly game, but what is make that interesting also is the balance inside LARP between game and play is very much interesting, is very much creating what LARP is and why LARP is an autonomous language. So it's between gaming and play pretend, so ritual performances. So start as a game, but then became more hybrid. One of the parent LARP are is Dungeons and Dragons. Other parents come along the way and are like psychodrama, play pretend. So what is interesting is that LARP is a lot of play in it. Now I'm going very, very fast on the difference between play and game because I'm sure that most of you know. Actually, do you know the difference between game and play? If you don't, please raise your hand. Okay, at least one person were enough to include everyone. So, if the play is the word that goes in several contexts, play an instrument, play a game, play a theater play, is action without many rules, less structure, fewer objective, not exactly measurable. For example, if I try to throw a ball against the wall, this is probably play, a playing a playful activity, just me having fun in the act of throwing the ball. But if I had a rule, I have to throw the ball, and every time I have to catch it with a different hand. And if I ask you to play with me, and the one who fails miss 1 point, then it became a game. I'm gamifying a playful experience. So, and there is a lot of that in LARP. Of course, game is a bit different, is measurable, goal-driven, have more rules, and if we want to follow one of the most known quotation from Zimmerman is that game is a free movement within a rigid structure. I give you a rigid structure, the rules, and then you can go what you want, but you have to stay inside the rule frame. So this is the idea. So what is LARP position between game and play? Is that, in my experience, what can be interesting if you want to look at LARP and maybe steal something from LARP, is that LARP go to experience and mainly create human interaction that are in real person, but could be also digital, of course. There are also digital LARP, by the way. So you can know that it's mainly a playful activity that relate on your emotional aspect. So so probably it's not exactly a game, but this is fine. This is one of the key feature of LARP. So what we can learn, last slides for me, we know that game are a lot about agency, and we know what agency is, so I'm not going to go through agency, but motive and alibi in LARP are very strong. And you can add motive and alibi in your game, because I think already there is agency, otherwise probably it's not even a game. So agency, I will not go to explain what it is, but let's say it's action-reaction, and my freedom of act and receive feedback from the system. I do something, if nothing happens, it's not exactly agency. But what we can add with LARP is, for example, the motive. You have to reflect a lot why this person is going to do that. In a video game, in a board game, it's more easier, the question. Why they're doing that? Because they decide to play this game. So this game have these 4 rules, totally okay. In a LARP, you don't have 4 rules, you don't have 4 action, you have millions action. So why this player should do this instead of this one? And is the design doing it? Is the narrative suggesting? So reflect a lot in the motive. Why? So play with people expectation, with people wills. This is something you have to do a lot in LARP to create involvement. You have to have an enthusiastic yes from your participant to make them actually do something. And then it comes for the alibi. In a LARP, you are probably in a LARP, probably you will find yourself doing stuff you don't exactly agree on. If we play, I'm trying to find a not controversial example, a very racist person, and I am not racist at all, and you are not racist at all, and we are playing together, and I'm portraying these horrible people, probably I need that alibi to define myself. I'm not that person. You don't have to use the alibi as an excuse to say, it was not me, it was the character. No, this is a lame excuse to be a dick. But alibi is also an important tool to reflect on your character and the fictional action you do in a game environment. And this can make people more aware that as a player, you are an enormous power. You have a lot of things you can do. You are an important part of the chain. You are not just the final receiver. You have to perceive yourself as part of or something. So, and if you work a lot, of course in mechanics, so agency, but also on alibi and motive, then you have a community, which is important because it's not only hype, not only a community or possible buyers, but people that know how to play your game and why to play your game. So people and games are part of the same process. So now that we know that, let's reinforce that. Thank you very much.
Hello. I have a question. Does ever like emergency happens because your LARP seems really realistic, and to live for such a long time in a closed environment, does ever happen some kind of emergency where people evacuated or got sick, or what do you do in those cases?
During our event, we have a safety team, which means that there are some people that are dedicated exactly to that. Safety can mean practical, physical, or psychological. If you hurt yourself, we have a doctor, or we know where is the closest hospital and we can drive you. There is always someone that you can call if something happens. Psychological level also sometimes is very important, because when you play on dark teams and you are portraying a character that are put yourself into question, maybe you need someone to discuss, to have a talk, or a quiet space. We always designated a quiet area where you can go when you feel overwhelmed by the game. So the idea is not to make you do what you don't want to do. The idea is to assist you to test your boundaries and do that comfortably. When it's too much, you can always step out, discuss, go back in game, modify the game. So yes, we took care of that because we know that your question.
But did ever happen something? Do you have some kind of short story?
If you want to buy me a beer, I can tell you a lot of that.
Okay, another question. Does ever some trolling happen when people come with their own agendas and they intentionally do not follow the intended story? Yeah.
Okay, so this is what makes LARP so cool, but also so difficult to become mainstream, because you need preparation for this kind of LARP. Preparation doesn't mean a lot of stuff to read or to go about. It's more like you have to understand the spirits. Where are you going? So back in the days, was more difficult. Now I think both designer and gamers are more aware of what a LARP is about and to adjust. So back in the days when the international LARP community was like building up, was very easy to go to a LARP with a different tradition and bring your Italian mentality to a, I don't know, Hungarian LARP, or your French mentality to the UK LARP, and there was a bit of difference. Then also thanks to meeting books and stuff, we have more a common language. So LARP is quite recent, but still growing up very faster. And so now it's more easy to have keywords or sentence, and it's easier to go to a website that's present you a LARP, say, okay, this LARP is this and this. Maybe I will write an email to the organizer, and they will answer. So now we are more common language. Was a problem, but we managed to solve the biggest issues so far. Give you a short example. When we organize international LARP, we are people, last time we had people from 32 different countries in the world, from 3 different continents, and make them be together and have be on the same page was a big chunk of our work, but also was very important, because then we were able, for example, to go into the US and to run one of our LARP in the US. And this situation was very funny, very strange, because when you do an international LARP in Europe, you have people from different countries, so you speak no one language, no one culture. You create like sort of neutral field. But when you move to the US, and every player are from the US, and you are the only one who is not. So they have native speaker, it's their own culture. You are proposing something from another continent. It worked just because we managed to speak the same language and convey our goals and desire as designer. But yes, was a big part of the work.
Thanks. There was a question somewhere there.
So, do you employ players basically serving as NPCs like some other LARPs do? So players get a cheaper ticket, but they get to perform the role of like some orc that players kill.
Yeah, it's very different, because I present you a particular kind of LARP. But you have to imagine that LARP, like video games, is a full spectrum with many different things in it. So some LARP requires you to produce more stuff, some LARP ask you to do less, some LARP are 3 days long, some LARP are 2 hours long. And so there is no requirement, this goes for every LARP, you don't have to be an actor, you don't have to present, you don't have to perform. It's very much a game, so which means that all the people inside the room are the people that are going to play the LARP. We don't have any external audience. For example, I consider myself a good LARPer. I'm a terrible actor. I never act in my life. If you give me a stage and some line, it would be terrible. If you tell me, now we are role-playing, I know that I will do something for you and I will receive something back, and there is no judgment. This is something, for example, if you do a documentation for LARP is mainly doing by picture, because if you shoot video, it's terrible stuff, because you are basically watching a bunch of people that are performing it, but they are not performer. So, but it doesn't matter, because inside the magic circle we create, everything produced is like creating this emerging thing. When I say I'm a good LARPer, I mean I can give you, it comes naturally to me, to give you something you can create on. As an actor, I don't have to do that. I have to do a completely different job. So this is why I'm not an actor. But yeah, to answer to that, yes, there is no, it's not a performance. There is some performing aspect in it, but when you remove lines, fixed ending, and audience, this change completely. It's like when you play with your group of friends, and it's just you, them, create something together.
Thank you.
Thank you.